So, welcome to today's class. And today's class, we are going to talk about authorization. So, in the last class, we talked about authentication. So, your authentication is proving to yourself, like proving who you are. If you say your, if you say you claim to be, for example, Victor, then there are some credentials you should be able to show to us to make us know that you're who you claim to be. It's just like so this is me talking about authentication. So I'm just going over it. When you go to, when you if you go to a particular let's say your company, you're working in a company and they want to actually know who are their staffs. So at least as a staff in a company, you're supposed to have a valid ID card for that company. So that ID card serves as like what you use for your authentication, for you to prove who you are. If you say you're a staff and this is your name and this is your role, okay, so how do we really know you're a staff? They could check their staff book and see their number of staff and the rest of the things. But for them to confirm that you are a particular person on that staff book, you need to have some credentials to show to them. So now, authorization, talking about authorization today, authorization is simply what you as a person can have access to based on some conditions. So if we look at the scenario of a company, for example, staffs can have access to particular rooms. The ordinary people that come to that company might not be allowed to enter some certain rooms. For example, maybe in a big company, a normal anonymous person can't just walk into maybe the CEO's room or maybe the manager's room like that. You have to wait in the reception. Then maybe the receptionist contacts the CEO to confirm if he needs to see someone at that particular point. But maybe as like the receptionist, you can call the CEO, right? You can walk into the CEO or the CEO's office, you know. Or let's take for example in an engineering firm. So engineers are allowed to move around, go wherever they want to go. But as an ordinary person, maybe they will allow you access to a particular space, and then they might not allow you they might restrict you access to maybe some certain machines or some certain part of the company based on the fact that you're not a trained worker there, or you're not allowed to like maybe go towards that particular place. So that's the same way authorization works. So in programming, it's just saying maybe, for example, um, let's take a social media, for example. I can post something, right? I can post, like maybe I can write a post, a nice post, and then drop it. But so I can only be the person to edit my own post or delete it, right? So another person seeing my posts can't just edit it and go his way, or delete it and go his way, except maybe that person is an admin for that particular app. Let's say, for example, Twitter. I can't just go into Twitter and see someone's post and delete it, right? So it's only the owner that can delete it. Why can't I delete his post? Is because uh, I'm not authorized to do that based on the fact that the post itself is not my post, right? So we can do that same kind of a thing um, here. So that's what I'm going to show you, how to restrict based on rule, and then how to restrict based on maybe someone's ID or any other property. So, so this is where we stopped last. Okay, so let me clear this. All right. So stopped here, and we put this check here to check if when you try to access this particular route, if you're not logged in, then it means you don't have an authentication key and the rest. Now, let me create a post. Let me create post here, and maybe I'll call this. So now I want to make it possible that here people can use this place. Anybody can use this particular okay, logged in users can use this post to like create posts and share it with the world. For example, let's say I'm building something like I don't know, Twitter or Facebook. Let's say something like that. Say slash uh make posts, something like that. I check if the person is logged in, and then here I I put my request and response. Then I say so after doing this, I'll need to create a model. So yeah, I think I'll create a model, a new model, and I'll call that new model post model. Posts. And inside, I don't like writing these stuff from scratch. So I'll just come and copy them here. So uh posts, then in here I would say post should be equals to new schema. Then here I could say uh could say here that the posts, Abby, okay, would say user ID. I like putting this in like that. User ID should be string. I know I could populate this string instead of using string here. I could actually use something else, but like make it possible to populate this user ID. But I don't want to do that here. So I'll say user ID, and I could say maybe posts. Post should also be in string. All right. I could say that should also be string. And of course, here will be posts. Here would be posts. And then, of course, this would be post schema. So there will be post schema, your user ID, string, and the post that you're putting out there. So having done that, we'll come back here and we have make posts. So can import, can also import the post that we just created. Const posts. Oh, Wait. So here is supposed to be post schema. Schema should require, then I'll say we need post model. And this post schema here, so when we want to create a new post, we could say new post should be new post schema here. Then inside that post schema, we have user ID and we have our post. Now, of course, I know you guys will be asking where this user ID is from. So let's come back to this auth controller. Oh, check if the person is logged in. So there's something we could do here. After finding the person's username, of course, you know that this username is going to come back with an ID. Now, you can create a variable from here that we pass to the next route. So now, let's run this npm start. So if I told the constant user, let's say you made a request to that restricted route. Yeah, we've gotten to that route, but we have ID and we have the ID to be this, and we have the username to be Victor. So this is, remember this bearer token stuff was what we did in our last class. So we can get out this ID and store it. So if we did something like coming back here to say that user dot underscore ID, then we make that request again. So we get this object ID. Of course, if you don't want to store that as a string, if you don't want to store your user ID as a string, there are other formats you could store it as. So that's what I want to check. So if we go over to Mongoose documentation, you should see it. Mongoose. So I think at this getting started quick start guide, you should see a lot of things. So if we check models, we have new mongoose schema, name can be string and all those stuff. So let me check this validation. Oh wait, I think it's populate. So yeah, I think you can store it as, I can store, yeah. So this is what I want. So instead of storing the ID as an object, we can store it as a schema type object ID. So this would make it more useful than just being a string. So we'll come back to this model. We change this from being a string and we'll say it's an object ID. It's a type of object ID. Yeah, then we now say our post can be a string. So of course, coming back here, coming back to check if logged in, we know that this user ID is an object ID. So we can do something like this. We can say req.decoded should be equals to, or req.decoded.id should be equals to user dot underscore ID. So now this request, this req.decoded is an object that you're setting, and you're setting the ID property in that object to be the user's ID. Now, you know, it's since it's a middleware and you're setting this decoded object or whatever I want to name it will be passed to the next route. So if we do this now, right, we say here instead, else if there is a user, then that's when we want to do that. Now after doing that, if we go, so that is used to check. After this check, if we come here and we just decide that okay, we come here and we console.log req.decoded.id, and I make that request again. We cannot set property of undefined. Okay, so let me remove the request.decoded and make the request again. Okay. Or instead of that, I would say request.decoded should be equals to the user's ID. And then here, instead of, okay, I'll just put out that request.decoded. And then, yeah, so I make that request and I see that particular object. So which means, sorry, which means in here, I can have access to this request.decoded. Then also in here, I could also have access to that request.decoded. So I could say that the user ID should be equals to request.decoded, which contains the ID. Then this post now, I could decide to destructure, say post should be equals to req.body. So we've made that post, and then now we want to be able to restrict people from deleting each other's posts, right? So after checking, anybody can make a post as far as the person is logged in, but we want to create like a delete route so that, okay, so that only people that are like the owners of that post can delete their post. So let's do it. So we'll say router.delete post with an ID. So this request to contain, so if you want to get the params, which is the ID you want to delete, we'll say uh, the post ID should be equals to dot ID. Then, so now we need that middleware to stop people from, like anybody from deleting the post. So after we write check, we need to add that extra middleware. So we'll come here and maybe create a new file called authorize.js as a middleware. We would say function authorize or whatever you want to name it. We say authorize. And then since we want to authorize, of course, you know that the what we use to distinguish one post from another post is that post ID. So the post ID will come in this request. So we'll now check, is this post ID that, or sorry, we are going to have user ID in this post. So we are going to compare this user ID with the user ID that is coming from the front end. So if they match, then it means that particular user is the owner of that post. If they don't match, then it means that particular user is not the owner of that post. So that's what we want to do here. So let's understand what we want to do. So here we have request.decoded is the user ID. So we will need to compare this decoded user ID with the ID for that particular post. So that's how we achieve that. So we are going to say that the user ID should be equals to request.decoded. Now we have this user ID. Now, how do we get the post ID, like the ID for that particular post? So that will come as in the parameter. So we would say post ID should be equals to req.decoded. Sorry, the post ID would be req.params.id. Remember this params ID. So that's what we want to check now. So now we are going to look for that post. So which means we'll need that. We'll need this post model. And what did we call it? Post schema. So come here. We'll require so post schema should be that. We are going to require that. Then here we are going to say that post schema dot find. We should use find by ID. Then the ID would be the post ID. Then we'll just leave this as empty. Or even if we don't add it, because it's optional. So we can have our callback. Okay, yeah, okay, we need to have that before the callback. Or I said we could do this actually using async await. So we'd say we'll write async there and would say the post should be equals to await, because we remove all this. So this post here is going to contain the ID, and then the other things for the post, it's going to contain its own ID. It's going to contain the user ID and the post. So here now we can say if the post dot underscore ID is equal to the if post underscore user ID, sorry, if post underscore so that user ID would clash. Okay, it won't clash. If that post dot user ID is the same as this user ID, which is that one there, then we should call the next. So which means we know that that particular person is the owner of the post. Else, we should not allow the person to pass. So we could tell the person you are not allowed to access this route. So we export that. And then here, when we want to delete, after checking that the person is logged in, then we now want to like authorize, check if the person is authorized to delete. So require of course. So here we just check if the person is authorized that way. Okay, not here in the delete route. So if the person is authorized, then we can, oh, if the person is authorized, maybe for now we should just say, we should just say the person is authorized. Maybe you are authorized. You are authorized. So now let me try to make a post. I'll make a post, and then the post has to contain the user ID and post. So I think I'm not worried about this user ID because it will automatically be added for me. So I'm worried about the post. So uh, here I'll just say, so this is what you can do. You can comment that out and push it to the bottom. So I have space to do whatever I want to do. Now say post. This is my first post. Okay, I'm getting. So what happened? Post to make post, then you check if the person is logged in, and then uh so okay, I think I wasn't through with this. So after this, I was supposed to say new post dot save. And of course, if I wanted to use async await here, I'd say post should be equal to await for the new post. Okay, all right. So new original post or something like that. So it's a JSON and say, yeah, successful through. I mean, so we could do that. Save that, have a new post as the new original post. Then hopefully, okay. So R is not defined in line 22. Ah, RQ. Ah, okay. So I've made this post. I could make a second post, for example. This is my second post. Then I think we could try this. We could try this with a different user. So I think I can use this that other authorization. So I could do something like authorization with that new user. This is my first post. So uh, why isn't this going through? Okay, so I guess this particular one is invalid. All right, so we have like I think we've made like three different posts. We've made this is my first post twice, and you see that the user ID is like automatically put in there, right? The user ID is automatically put in there from the back end, and then the post, and then the original ID for this particular post. So this ID you're seeing here is this new post ID, while this is the user's ID, which is the particular user. So now, if we want to delete a particular post, from what we wrote, we said delete, then we now write post and the ID. So of course, let's say I want to delete this particular post. with that ID. I could do something like posts and then the ID. This sidebar is always making me confused. So I could do delete post slash the ID. Then if I send, of course, I don't need I don't need anybody. I just need only the header. Uh, uh, post should be a wait post schema. So this is how to debug authorize line 6. So we go to authorize line 6 and we are going to see where our mistake is coming from. So after this await, I didn't put space. So part of what's apart from like knowing how to write your stuff, you're also learning how to debug from here. So if I do that, or it's saying I'm not allowed access to this route. Okay. So that would be a problem with this post and user ID. So I think I need to see what is coming from post console.log what is coming from post. Of course, post is coming with the user ID and an ID, and I'm trying to get to use that user ID. So I said if user ID is equals to user ID, of course, let me see what the user ID is bringing out. Okay, if I have that post like that, uh, post, and I have the user ID. Okay, so the user ID from here and the user ID from here are actually the same. Uh, so um, so what do I do in this case? What do I do in this case? All right, I think if I say to string on both of them, let me see if that would solve the issue. Okay, so it's now showing you are authorized. So which means I was supposed to change both of them to string. If I did dot to string here, and I did the same thing here to string, and I made that same request. So yeah, that's converted this to string, and this user's ID. Where is it? Okay, post dot user ID dot to string. So that's going to print out both of them. Yeah. So it prints out both the user ID and from the database and the one that was gotten from like the user through that JWT. I hope you know what is giving this user ID when the user makes like when front end makes requests is this user ID that was encrypted. So it's decrypted back to the user ID. That's why we are able to do this kind of things. So if you check, okay, we've been able to do that. So we've said if the user IDs are the same, then the person can be allowed to delete. We can say if the person's ID is the same like if the person's ID is are the same, or we can say if the person's role is an admin. So that's going to be another thing. So after this is like checking like who has a particular a particular property on the back end and who can actually do some certain things on it. Then we're going to check, we are going to talk about role-based ID, like role-based authorization very soon. So of course, since I'm the owner of this post, I can comfortably delete it. So instead of having this you're authorized, you can actually do some deleting, but I don't want to delete first. So let me try and create another user and then we'll try to delete that post. So remember, this is the post ID. So just save this /post/ID. We'll save it somewhere there. Copy this, come back here, paste it, uncomment them. Then I would say maybe ukok at ukok.com, ukok and ukok. So let's say I'm trying to create a new user, right? Create a new user. So I've created that user, then I try to log in. Then after logging in, I get this beautiful token. And of course, come and comment that one that was already there and announce it. Authorization. Authorization should be bearer and then the new token. So let's see if I try using this new user with this with those properties and I try to delete. Let's say I try to delete, right? Try to delete that same post. It will show me that I'm not allowed access to this route because that's not that's not my user ID. And let me still console or log those user IDs. They are actually useful. So console.log the two user IDs. So that one and the one sent to me from front end, or not really sent to me from front end, the one that was decoded. So if we console.log both of them, I make that request again. So the user IDs don't match. This one has like the user IDs are different, right? So which means that particular user that is trying to lead that post is not the author of that post. Of course. But if I use the author of that post, right, I could definitely delete that post. So I cut this one, which is not the author, out. Maybe I paste it somewhere here, maybe for later use. So if I send that request, it shows you are authorized. So if I decide to implement the whole delete process, of course, I could say posts. Do I have that post here? Yeah, I have post schema. So I'd say post schema dot find by ID and delete. So if I have that post schema dot find ID, and I'd say the post ID should be the post ID. We are not filtering by anything. Then so we'll check for error and we'll say a deleted posts. You can do this. So after you'd say on a normal, if error, If there is any error, console.log it, right? Else we can send back a JSON. Can send back a JSON saying successful through, maybe successful through, message should be deleted successfully. Deleted posts, which is like that. Yeah, so that post has been deleted, right? So that particular post has been deleted. If I try to delete it again, find out that we would have a problem because that user ID doesn't really exist anymore. Oh, sorry, that post doesn't exist. So we don't have the user ID inside that post. So which means that post doesn't exist again. And so if I remove all these things here, and I think I tried to send that request again. Okay. So I think in this case, you can just say, you can say, if this doesn't exist, if that doesn't exist, then return. So like, I think that's like saying don't do anything. Oh, sorry. If we don't have that post anymore, or if the post is empty, then we shouldn't do anything. So this isn't going to actually do anything. Or you could just respond with post doesn't exist. So another thing, maybe you just decide to refactor your code. Or post has been deleted. Then else, if it exists, then that's when we want to delete it. Else, if it exists, then we want to delete it. So I think if we make that request again, we'll see that the post has been deleted. So which means that this particular post with this ID doesn't exist anymore. So we've solved that issue. So now let's look at role-based authorization. So it's almost similar to this one, except that you're not checking for IDs, you're checking for certain kinds of roles. So we could do something like roles.js, or you can say check role.js. So this is me basically taking my time to talk about middlewares. So if you want to check roles from this request from this request dot decoded, so we can check the user ID, maybe user ID. So first you want to, before checking for the person's role, so the person role could be maybe user, admin, super admin, driver, student, all those stuff. So if you want to check for their ID, you have to first fetch their record and then check the kind of person they are. Or sometimes if you want to make this simpler, at the moment where you're trying to log in, where is it? This controller, at the moment you're trying to log in and you're trying to sign this, you can just put in the username and the row, but I don't really know why this row isn't working out well. It's supposed to work out perfectly, but don't know, I'll check that. So when we have that, we said, where is check row? All right. So we can say the user ID should be equals to request.decoded. So request.decoded will always be that user ID. And we also need to import the user's schema. So user schema, we'll try to import that from here. Call so now ID, find by ID. Then we'll now check that user ID. Of course, I want this to be an async await function. So async, and I'll now say user details should be equals to that. So at first, I just need to console.log this. Whatever comes back as the user detail. Now let's come back here. So we already have a general route, Abby. We have a general route that anybody can access, which is this, anyone can access this route. So let's create a route that only staffs can access, for example. So say routes.get, then after, we would call this maybe staff route. I know we don't have staff routes, for example. We now say we'll write check here, and then we are going to import this check row. So we want to check the row. So we'll say auth middleware slash check row. Of course, we'll call this check row, Abby. Or I didn't export from here, so I would say module dot export equals to check row. So I've exported check row so that inside here I could then write check row and I have it there. So I want this to be accessed by only staff. So after checking your logged in, you can now check for your row. So of course, let me open MongoDB Compass. So we see the kind of users we have, and we can create a user that is a staff. So opening MongoDB Compass, So while it's opening, we should fix up this check row. So said user details, then we can say, so now this place is just a bunch of if statements. We could say, uh, so, okay, instead of check row, you can have different uh, functions here to check a particular stuff, like check, where is it? So instead of just having one row, one function here or one controller here, you can have different controllers. So instead of check row, we can have maybe check staff, check user, check all those stuff. Okay, check staff, check admin and staff and the rest of the things. So maybe I'll just call this check staff. Okay, let me leave it as check rows since it's only staffs we are checking. So I could say if user details dot role is equals to staff. If the user's role is equals to staff, then we can call the next function. Now say else then it means it's not equals to staff, it's something else. So we could say uh, only for staffs. And of course, for each of these roles the that didn't go through well, you should also set a status code, like a proper status code, like you say rest.status, then before the dot send. So it is going to set the status so that they could use that status to, so they might, in most cases, they might not really check what is being sent back here. They would actually use the row, but this should give like a description of what is happening and why they are not getting that particular, like the access to that particular route or something. So yeah, if the user detail the role is equals to staff, then next else we are going to say that, and maybe we can call this check staff instead of check role. And here we'll have check staff and check staff. So you can have another one to check for another role. Maybe if you have an admin, you just do check admin, run through this process, and then you check if the person is staff or whatever, however I want to do it. All right, so if we check staff that way, of course, a MongoDB is open, Mongo Compass is open, so we should check which database am I using? Test auth. For the users, we have two users with the role of user, right? We have these two users with the role of user. So let me make this person a staff, or let me create a new user with like the staff role. So we could simply do this by saying where is the route? Okay. So in this controller, we have register. You can create maybe register staff or something, or you could say before this particular point, if the role comes with the body, then you can now like assign that. Else, if it doesn't come with the body, you can do something different. So here what I could do is new user. Then I could say if there is no new, sorry. So we can say if there is no request dot body dot row. So if there is no row, if there is no row, then this is what we are going to. We are going to say new user should be equals to this with the role of user. And we will now say else, so which means that exists. We will now say we want the row to be whatever the person has sent. So if this doesn't exist, it will be a default of user. Else, if it exists, then have the row like that. And since we want to use let, so I guess I have to remove this token. So I'll remove this token, keep here, comment it. I want to register another user, cop one, this, I'll just add one, of course, to register. Uh, yeah, so that user is created successfully. I log in, I get this beautiful. Oh, sorry. I'm supposed to create the role. So the role is staff. Sorry for making that mistake. I have this user here. So I need to go through this again. So the role is staff. I think the problem should be from here. Problem should be from these controllers. Oh, there's a problem somewhere. So there's an error somewhere. Can't really trace that. So let's just keep things simple. So if we made that possible, remove this, send that post request. So we've created a user as staff there. So if we log in, we see that key or the token that has been generated for us. Then now could say authorization should be bearer and then the token for that particular route we just created for staffs. So if we say slash staff now, of course, only staffs can access this route. Only staffs can access this route. Oh, what's wrong? Forty. So why the error? So let me check. At this point, we have staff and we have check staff here. Okay, so the problem is from this check row. So had it been I called just the next function here to see what is going to print out. And then in here, I call that check staff. So this is not what I'm expecting from the user details. Oh, wow. Ah, all right. So this was what I was expecting. And sorry about that. So if we check the row, we see user details. We are now saying if the user details dot role is equals to staff, then we call the next X, else we should show that it's only for staffs. So if we do that, I don't think we'll need this to anymore. So if we did that and send that request again. So I've accessed that route. So that's why it's showing only. Yeah, I've accessed that route. That's why it's showing only staffs can access this route. Okay, you're a staff. Let me put that inside there instead of that. So yeah, you're a staff. Yeah. So your staff is there. So if I tried using something else like this user ID belongs to a normal user, not a staff. This other ID I'm pasting now belongs to a user. If I try to get, make a GET request to that same route, it's going to tell me that it's only for staffs, only for staffs. But if I use the one for staff, which is this particular ID that belongs to this person who is a staff, it's going to allow me access to that particular route. So I've shown you how to know the owner, like authorize people based on who owns a particular um, property on the database. I've done that, and I've also shown you how to restrict access based on rules. So if someone has a particular setting, like a particular rule, then maybe the person should have access to a particular route. So you can do this kind of uh, things for like as many routes as you want. You could also decide to arrange your codes well and use, I think, is it router.use or something like that, to it, or express.use to like. So if you look, these three have check, check, check. You can put them somewhere, and then you can declare middleware, maybe here, like before the routes, and then say, okay, before checking any of these routes, this middleware has to be activated. So you can do that, but I prefer to do it per route, like this one route. Each route you actually do your checking, check if the person is logged in, then so your authorization, your authentication, and then the authorization and all the stuff. So yeah, that's it for like today's class. And then I think the next class we are going to talk about like how to documents, like how to write a documentation for your site, because after building for your API, because after building this, like you don't expect people to come and read through your code to understand how your API works. So people should be able to like read the documentation and be able to use your API without having too much hassle or problems. So that ends it for today's class. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining and the rest. So that's till next week. All right. So bye for now.